Now, at Mythcon Milwaukee, we've noticed this trend of rational discourse retreating to the internet, where you can casually sit behind a keyboard, formulate a thought, press enter, and then sit back and flip out reading the comments. And we said to ourselves, where's the fun in that? Wouldn't it be more exciting to see this live on a stage? I don't know, perhaps somewhere historic? So on a serious note, we hold firm to the belief that in-person interaction is central to a civil society. In this digital age, it's so easy to demonize someone who's a disembodied internet presence. But when we're face to face with each other's humanity, we have an opportunity for our hardline positions to moderate and have that conversation. So here today, we encompass a group of people that's all ages, sexes, identities, I could go on. There will be some disagreement, but there will be also some common ground. And if any of you have had a chance to take a look at our Skeptics Pledge, which was introduced prior to the conference, and also available, I'm pretty sure, at the front, among many things, it says that through dialogue, we can create understanding, expand our views, and solve problems. So with that in mind, we're going to have a great friggin' time here at Mythcon. So, the speaking lineup for today is absolutely fantastic. You may leave here a little more woke or a little more red-pilled. Either way, we promise you'll leave a bit more informed. The cherry on top for today's festivities is the grand premiere of the Batman and Jesus movie. So, without further ado, let me introduce our first guest. June, a.k.a. Shoe0nHead, and Greg, a.k.a. Armoured Skeptic, are both wildly popular YouTube personalities. Today we'll get their insights into identity politics, online discourse, and echo chambers, with a Q&A session at the end. First up, clocking in at 5'2" with a crazy obsession for bunny rabbits, please give a warm welcome to Shoe0nHead. And now, let's give it up for the burly Canadian whiskey aficionado whose dream of visiting the Pabst has finally come true. Welcome, Armoured Skeptic.
Oh my God, what the hell happened? How did we get here? Somebody made a huge mistake.
I don't know how this happened.
I don't know, we just grabbed a couple mics, walked on stage, and nobody stopped us.
This didn't work at Mythcon. They didn't work.
How's everybody doing? Good morning. Thank you for waking up at the ass crack of dawn to come see us two idiots. I don't know what you're thinking. Keep in mind, both of us are super dyslexic. Be patient with us. We wrote down everything we're going to say.
Please, no bullying.
Yeah, we've never done anything like this. This is actually our first ever convention.
Yeah.
So thank you. It means a lot to me. Thank you. June looks cute today, doesn't she?
Hello, friends. I am June. You probably know me as Shoe0nHead. I'm a socio-political commentator on YouTube.com. I'm mostly known for my comedic critiques of feminism and making a total fool of myself on the internet for your entertainment.
And I'm Gregory, the armored goddamn skeptic. Right? Now, I'm kind of a movie geek. I'm all over the place online, but my passion is skepticism and atheism, and I also do socio-political commentary. I'm not as well known for that as obviously as June, but I have a lot of fun of it, doing it, and I think that, you know, a lot of you may have never even seen my face before, but I know that a lot of you have seen this, right?
Is that logic?
I want you all signing this by the end of the day, by the way. Now, it's ridiculous, right, that a grown-ass man like myself would use a cartoon character to represent himself online? I mean, but that's kind of what online discourse has evolved into. Originally, I was anonymous. That was the point of this character. And more people these days are becoming anonymous, hiding who they really are. And not because they're worried so much about bad things happening to them, but sometimes it's just because they're worried that their opinions will just be outright dismissed or ignored just because of who they are, their inherent identity. And It's hard to convince people sometimes, but just simply being a white person or a male or straight.
Literally Hitler.
That's enough for some people to just completely dismiss everything you have to say. Anyways, this was all a response to my first encounter with identity politics. And when I first encountered identity politics, I didn't even really understand what was happening. It was actually through Atheism Plus. Now, I'm not going to, lambast Atheism Plus. There were good things about it, and there were bad things about it. And, when the organization first started, I actually really believed in Atheism Plus. They're pro-equality, pro-human rights, and that all sounded great on the surface. And, I honestly believe that the organizers had the best intentions. And I liked that they were pro-equality. I consider myself pretty progressive. I'm definitely a liberal. By any standards today, but the meaning of the word liberal has kind of changed, or at least the perception of what a liberal is has definitely changed in our political climate lately. But after a short time interacting with Atheism Plusers on the forums and on the blogs, I started to notice a certain pattern of behavior within the community. Suddenly, like I said, if you're a white man, don't bother bringing up race because, if you disagree mildly, you'll be called a racist. That's what happens. If you're a man, don't bring up gender equality because if you disagree about gender equality, you're sexist. And if you are straight, don't bring up LGBT because disagreeing with people, you'll be called a homophobe. And this is like legitimately what started to happen. And I don't mean if you disagreed with equality, or if you disagreed with the movement in general. I just mean if you disagreed with little minor things, if you disagreed with what equality meant. That was the first thing I noticed. Or if you disagreed with how to achieve it, or things like that. Where am I? Yeah, there were other things too. You could agree with an entire blog post. There were excellent writers, excellent bloggers in the Atheism Plus movement, and they bring up a lot of great points, but sometimes just disagreeing with a single bullet point, it would start this huge debate. And I know it sounds petty, and it was. That's kind of what happened. The atheism movement, the atheism community, at least online, it got split right down the middle because of this. And Richard Carrier, who's here tonight, big fan of Richard Carrier, he promised when the organization started that it would be a place for debate and open discussion, but that's not what we got. What we got was just dogfights, and it was kind of disappointed everybody on both sides. People were literally actually being banned from different forums and organizations for politely disagreeing, and that wasn't hyperbole. Of course, I would later find out that this was not unique to the atheist community. I thought it was at the time. I was still pretty new to atheism, and I was still pretty new to social media in general. So I thought it was just us that were having this problem. But I know now that this is actually something that's happening across the board. It's happening to all sorts of communities, all across the internet, in real life. Some furries are even arguing about this. Of course, it was around this time also that P.Z. Myers, he said that he's no longer a skeptic. And so people like me, we were starting to call ourselves skeptics as a badge of honor to show what side we were on. And I'm not saying I was some honorable defeater or tyrant or anything. I was being super petty at the time. Super petty. But when I created Armoured Skeptic, I wasn't trying to become a big popular YouTuber. I just wanted a seat at the table. I wanted my voice to be heard. And for some reason, you idiots listen.
Does it make sense?
Thanks, bud.
For those of you who don't know us, we're both pretty liberal. We believe in equality, equal opportunity. We believe in personal freedom and liberty. And most importantly, we believe in individualism, not collectivism. We believe people are more than their race, their sexuality, or their gender. You're more than Greg, the white guy. You're Greg, the cocky, smarmy guy with nice hair who likes movies and has a life-size Darth Vader in his living room. That, to this day, I swear to God, no. I swear. To this day.
Well, you're more than June, the tiny Italian girl who giggles all day when she consumes sleeves of cookie dough. Oh, wait.
You can be a good person with an ism attached, and you can be a good person without an ism attached. You can believe in equality without feminism, just like you can be a good person without God. You don't need a God to tell you right from wrong. You can reject a God and still be a good person. And that scares them. The thought of people rejecting what basically is their religion scares them.
Now here's the part that's going to piss people off. As an atheist, put himself out there in the debate sphere, you have theism versus logic. I was met by a lot of Christians and who tried to convince me that my decision to no longer worship God was just a ploy to remove myself of moral obligation. And they felt that atheists like me, they just wanted to live hedonistic lives, sinful lives. The old Christian argument, I'm sure many of you experience the same thing. And the old Christian argument is that only people who believe in God are moral because God created morality. I'm sure, again, we've all heard all of this before. Christians seem to have a fear of us atheists because they believe that we're capable of terrible things, horrible crime. I know Eric Hovind said that if he was an atheist, he'd be out there murdering people all the time. This is their perspective of morality. It is literally connected to a fear of hell, a fear of God, a fear of burning for eternity. That's, excuse me. We all knew that this was ridiculous, obviously, but I have a feeling that this reflected our community a little bit more than I think most of us were willing to admit. I know I personally had a huge struggle when I came out of theism. My fear of hell, my fear of God, it completely held me back. I mean, for years, I wouldn't drop my belief in Christian God because of hell. I could see the lies, I could see the deception, I could see all the contradictions. I could see that parts of the Bible were obviously created to control people, but besides that, despite that, I still couldn't let go of my fear of hell. And then, when I left theism, the first group I found was Atheism Plus, and it was an easy sock to fit my foot in. It was a nice, comfortable shoe on the head. Yeah, this fear is a powerful fear for sure. The Christians I would later debate believed their morality hinged on the system of burning for sins, and we as atheists, we had to demonstrate that our morality was more connected to our place in our tribes, our desire to fit in with other humans, and just an overall desire to just be good people. We knew we were good people. We knew that morality did not hinge on God. We knew that God didn't create it. We wanted to prove to them that we're still good people. And that desire to be a good person, I'm sure, just like me, is what drove a lot of people to want to become members of Atheism Plus. And I think that people simply replaced that God, though, with another higher power, another moral standard that they felt that they needed to abide by. And it comes with its own set of labels, with its own words you must say, words you must not say, things you must do, things you must not do, unless you want to be considered moral by that in-group. And it has it has its own set of sins even that you can't commit. And some people call this social justice, intersectional feminism. There's lots of different terms for this group, and I don't want to blanket everybody in that identifies with the social movement, because again, even though I'm a critic of social justice, a critic of feminism, I have a great deal of respect for what those movements mean, what they're trying to do. I just disagree with the way they do it. And that's always been my biggest concern with the group. Their new moral God, though, this new moral God of social justice, whatever you want to call it, it had the same power over atheists that the biblical God seemed to have over Christians, and this was something that I noticed pretty early on. Everything that I had been taught to look for in theists, every argument I was told that theists would make, every logical fallacy, everything that I had been trained and honed to look for in theism, I was starting to notice in our own group, in our own community. And I think it's pretty clear that these atheists, and including myself at the time that they didn't shed themselves of their fears regarding morality. They simply, I think it's pretty clear that they didn't shed their fears regarding morality. They simply created a crutch to this, a way to feel moral, a way to feel that they've achieved the status of being a good moral person by adorning these labels, by using these terms, and following these doctrines, joining the right group, fighting for the right side. And they were so sure that you can only really be moral as a feminist, to the point where if you just said you're not a feminist, they consider you a bad person. And I feel that a lot of social justice warriors, whatever you want to call them, the ones that act irrationally towards us, the critics of social justice, they fear us very much the same way that those Christians in the past feared the atheist movement.
Some of you may or may not know there was an organized effort to prevent us from speaking on this stage today. I'm considered one of the most milquetoast and softest of the anti-SJW YouTubers. Like, I've been carrying around a giant stuffed bunny backpack all day, so if you're worried about me, I honestly don't know. We were called bigots, racist, sexist, all of course, with like no proof. They smeared us, dragged our names to the dirt, quote mined, lied, sucked up any crumbs they could to get us down from here.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard about this, but because of this incident, there were a few speakers who were supposed to come today who decided to back out. And it was very disappointing. I'm not going to parade them, I'm not going to insult them. I'm actually pretty sad about this because I looked up to these people. I was really looking forward to shaking their hands and rubbing shoulders with them in the green room. And it cut me pretty deep when they decided that we weren't good enough for them. I mean, really, in my early days of being an atheist, these guys were my heroes. And there was some debate online about whether or not their decision to back out was right, the right decision. I don't think it was. It was certainly a valid decision. I mean, it's their image, their careers, their brand, or whatever. You know, they can do whatever they want with it. And they certainly would have received a lot of pressure within their own communities to not show up because we were here. And you know, honestly, like attending could have damaged their reputations within their respective communities because to them, this tiny little thing and I are extremely controversial. You know, this can be pretty discouraging to people like us that want a seat at the table. We're not trying to chase these people off. We just want to sit down with them and talk. And we're treated like the enemy before we even say a word. There's, you know, one of the problems is that there's this narrative that there's only two sides to the debate. There's the social left, and then everyone else is, well, they call them alt-right sometimes, what have you. I've heard misogynist, racist. We've been called Nazis, white supremacists. It's ridiculous. And I mean, just their perception is because we don't fight for the right side, we are inherently helping the wrong side. And there's a growing number of people like us, just moderate people, who used to have no participation in this social debate at all, coming from more nuanced positions like disgruntled liberals, centrists, even moderate right-wing conservatives, who we're starting to find that we have more in common with than we realized in the beginning. And you know, more people like this are stepping up and having their voices heard. There's more people like us that are showing up, but we're not a homogenous group. We're not a single-minded group. Unlike the social justice movement, there are no set standards, no set goals, nothing to really live up to other than maybe our desire to fight for freedom of speech and basic liberties, which seem to be under attack more and more these days in every community. And that's probably the main reason why, you know, it's so easy to dismiss us, is because we're not a homogenous group. And it's easy to just say, oh, well, we're right of them, so we must all be right-wingers, we must all be alt-righters. And I've personally explained in every single bio, on every single social media platform that I've ever created, that I'm not a political activist, I'm not part of an ideological group,
I'm just an individual with my own opinion. And that's what I feel like a lot of us are. A lot of us that speak up to try to contradict, to try to criticize the social justice movement, not even necessarily be against it, is that we're all just individual people who don't share the same opinion with everybody else who's on our side. And there's lots of obstacles in our way. For example, the mainstream refuses to acknowledge we exist. So we can talk about that for days, to be honest. There is that narrative, like I said, that there's only two sides to the debate. So our very existence destroys that narrative, which is probably why we're met with so much hostility. And our ideas aren't heard or acknowledged. Instead, we're just met with amateur psychologists playing armchair psychoanalyzing us, twisting our disagreement into some form of hatred or bigotry or misogyny or something like that. Trying to explain away our bigotry as a result of being mistreated by our mothers or our inability to get a girlfriend.
You have a girlfriend? How'd you do it?
Oh, it's got to be that life-size Darth Vader.
Okay. Why bother tackling someone's ideas when you can just cover your ears and label them whatever group it is your ideology wants to label them instead and attack that? Hiding from different ideas and demonizing, Jesus Christ, YouTube. Demonizing anyone who disagrees with you is how you end up in what some people like to call an echo chamber. It can be discouraging being told your voice doesn't matter or being told you're sexist, Nazi, SJW, feminazi for simply disagreeing with somebody on a topic. But don't close yourself off. If you stay in your echo chamber, you run the risk of fighting a straw man of your opponent. It's important to really know what you're up against. For example, until I started actually talking to feminists years ago, I didn't even know there were like other branches of feminism. Like sex-negative feminist or trans-exclusionary radical feminism. Yeah. I also used to say first and second wave were fine. I'm just against third wave feminism. Until I learned first and second wave had their major issues too, like the racism of first wave and the radical man-hatred of second, the scum manifesto years. For a few years, I was also quick to brush off non-binary as not real, and I would mock the concept often, but after talking to people who identified as non-binary, I learned more about it, which led me to decide I was not educated in it, and I didn't care. I wasn't interested in it. I don't care what you identify as, do whatever you want, as long as it's legal and doesn't hurt anybody. That's the one thing I love about America. That's the one thing I love about secular societies in general. I can straight up be like, I identify as a bunny and I won't get thrown off a roof. It's great. It's fantastic. But seriously, it's really important to talk to people with positions you oppose to get a better understanding of it and to not look like a total idiot when you do oppose it. When I talk to feminists, and not only do I learn more about feminists, I understand why I'm not a feminist. My arguments against it are more sound than ever, and it's not just, I'm not a feminist because they don't shave the armpits. It's now, like, I'm looking at you, 2012 June. What the hell even? Now it's, I'm not a feminist because I believe feminism is divisive and regressive on the road to equality. I'm not a feminist because I'm an egalitarian, and feminism does not hold a monopoly on equality, no matter how often they try to convince you of that. I'm not a feminism because I don't have to be. You might disagree with that, and I'm sure some of you do, but that's why a lot of you are here today, at least some of you. I know a lot of you are just here to see me all nervous on stage, or to push the wage gap button, which, by the way, I brought with me. It's in the bunny backpack I talked about earlier. It's really important you hear out the other side, no matter how ridiculous you think their opinions or beliefs are.
Like, might be a silly example, but on my channel, I make fun of or debunk flat earthers, New Agers, spiritualists, all sorts of, crazy conspiracy theorists. But at the same time, the reason I feel so confident debunking them is because I'm actually subscribed to a good deal of conspiracy theorists, and not because I'm interested in being convinced by them, though that is part of the game that I play. It's because I like to flex my skepticism. I get a kick out of constantly allowing myself to think about what another person is saying, filter it through my mind, And then, like I said, flex my skepticism. It's a good...
Flex your skepticism.
Yes, flex my skepticism, yeah. Now, sometimes an echo chamber, it's really just a comfort zone. And everyone seems to have an irrational fear of stepping outside of this comfort zone. I'm sure June and I do too, to a certain degree. It's just natural human behavior to stick with what you know and what you're comfortable with. June and I were at VidCon, for example, and we went with other skeptics and anti-social justice warriors, what have you. And most of us that attended, we ended up going to some panels that were headed by prominent progressives. And these people, they didn't receive us well. Just our very presence seemed to upset them. Some of them even went as far as to say that we were committing a conspiracy to intimidate them, which was not our intention at all. Honestly, most of us, including myself, we just wanted to hear what they had to say. We knew that they would be there. We knew there'd be prominent figures like Francesca Ramsey, for example, and we never heard them speak in public before. We didn't know what kind of things that they would be promoting or talking about. And we wanted to get a better idea of who they were and what they enjoyed and what they thought. And this was a courtesy that these people don't readily show us. Case in point, the people who refuse to come, again, simply because we are here. And to be honest, they've painted us in their heads as hateful people that are hell-bent on destroying equality.
Garbage human.
Garbage human beings. Garbage human, loud and proud. Hands up if you're a garbage human. Yeah, thank you. Now, but the thing is that as much as they like to paint us this way, I feel like I never live up to their expectations. In fact, the few times I managed to sit down with some of these people and talk, they were legitimately surprised at how much of a normal human being I was, which was a little bit scary that they had allowed themselves to believe these stories and these lies about us to that point. And, I like to give them as little to cling on to as possible. My friendly approach to this whole debate has actually helped build legitimate bridges between communities. Some of you might have heard of Brunchgate. We ended up sitting down with some prominent social justice advocates, and our meeting was actually really productive. It was very constructive, and we all ended up leaving like we felt like we'd accomplished something. And even though there was a pretty decently good reception, mainly from people on our side, overall, there were a lot of people that were really upset about this whole thing.
This one guy said that he wouldn't piss on us if we were on fire. Hi, Steve.
Now, this kind of attitude is intolerant. Obviously, saying something like that is clearly intolerant, yet that attitude is often employed in the name of tolerance. And I feel like I must say the disclaimer again. I am not saying all social advocates fall under this umbrella, obviously, because I considered myself a social advocate myself. But the point is it's a behavior that's prominent enough within the community that it is a problem. Intellectual diversity is not celebrated in today's debate at all. Not the way that the diversity of identities is celebrated. And you know what, that's the impression that I want to leave with you guys tonight, is that we should celebrate a diversity of thought as well. And I feel like that's something that we've lost in our community. That's something that we used to pride ourselves on, is the debate. And we've kind of lost sight about what the debate should be about. And we end up getting into these petty fights about who said what about what, and who was offensive and who was mean, and who doxed who, and we're forgetting what the debate is actually about. We all get sidetracked so easily. And I think that June and I, we didn't come here to prove that we have all the answers, or that we're not the right people to be up here. Honestly, I don't know, why did you guys invite us here? We're not the right people to be here, but for some reason, they let us up here. So I feel like it's important that the thing that we say here today, our message is that we should listen to each other. And, you know, we might not have all the answers, but maybe somebody out there does, maybe, or can help us find the answers, but that person isn't being listened to because they don't have the right identity. They don't have the right political leanings, or they don't label themselves the right thing. And I hope that we can all agree that it's worth listening to every idea, at least once, even the bad ones, even ideas that come from people who don't come from these marginalized identities. Because until we hear every idea, even the bad ideas, we can't know for sure that we're following the right ideas, that we have the right goals in mind. Now, I mean, we're all supposed to be skeptics here, right? I know most of us are atheists, and we're all supposed to be lovers and seekers of the truth. And science, a lot of us, we venerate science, and science is about testing ideas by proving them to be wrong. You don't know something might be right until you try to prove it wrong. And if it survives that test, then we know that it is at least a valid idea. And it's really hypocritical of us skeptics to not apply that same logic to social issues or political issues as well. How can you know for sure that your positions are the right ones if you won't even allow them to be tested against other ideas? How weak is your faith in your beliefs if you can't let somebody question them? That's the very definition of an echo chamber.
So I hope all the people here who see critics of feminism as evil bigots try to reach them and understand where they're coming from. And people who watch my videos, all my beautiful friendos, though it's fun to laugh at the absurdity of extremists and the tacky, cringe pop feminism, I want you to take a break from listening to the mock BuzzFeed, and when you go home today, subscribe to someone that you disagree with. This is important for a few reasons. One, you get to listen to a different perspective, which is always like super interesting. Two, it challenges your own beliefs. Three, it could potentially be hilarious and comedy gold, and I don't want you to miss out on that. And to the people in the audience who are thinking about making a YouTube channel or a blog or thinking about putting your voice out there, because I know a lot of you second guess yourself, you're like, oh, like Shu already talked about that, Sargon already talked about that, like I don't have to put my voice out there. Everyone has their own opinion and everyone brings something new to the table, and it's super important to do that. But you don't need an ideology, you don't need a religion, you don't need a movement. Your voice is important, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Now, we were supposed to have a little bit more time for questions. I think we only have about eight or 5 minutes or so now, unfortunately, because of the extra security. But can we open the floor up to some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we've got a mic that's right there.
Right over here.
And so if folks want to, if anyone has questions, that's awesome. We can kind of queue up, do your thing. Just a kind of a quick reminder with the whole... How civil of everyone. Just a quick reminder about the whole video recording thing. Again, short little clips, whatever. Don't record the whole thing. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it will be like up on our channels and stuff. Oh, yeah.
Well, I forgot to mention in the intro, so this whole thing is being recorded, and we will have this as a, as a full-length feature release in a couple of days after the conference. So if you want to share with your friends and all that, you just link them out. It'll be awesome. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
First off, how's it feel to have an actual physical platform?
It's strange. The funny thing is, like, I'm a relatively smaller YouTuber compared to the others that have come. 400,000 people follow me, but for some reason sitting in front of a couple hundred people makes me way more nervous.
Yeah. It's weird because I can like see you all. It's like...
Yeah, stop looking at me.
Stop. Look away. Yeah, it's crazy. It's
But it's an honor, though. Again, like I said, it's our first time. It's actually kind of a big deal for our realm of the skeptic community because until this very moment, none of us have been given this opportunity before. So again, thank you, everybody, for sitting down and listening to us.
And hopefully some of you guys will be up here one day talking.
Oh, I'm
I hope
sure you
so.
will.
Yeah.
Guys, it's so nice to get to meet both of y'all today. My friend and I drove all the way from Arkansas, so we're so glad to be
Oh,
here
wow.
to see y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was one hell of a drive. But you mentioned the importance of being able to just speak openly and just calmly, safely debate with people because it will end up benefiting everybody in the long run. Do you think that there's any way that on college campuses we'd be able to reinstate safe, open debating? Because I'm fairly right-wing and a lot of my ideas end up getting shut out. I've been labeled a Nazi several times. So is there any way, do you think, that we could reinstall safe speaking?
Right now, Berkeley is obviously the hot spot. It seems to be the main battleground for the debate about free speech. Though what that seems to be turning into might end up being more of a circus than productive at this point. Obviously, even in universities in Canada, like U of T, University of Toronto, we're running into that same issue where just speaking your mind it's not as easy to do as it used to be. Even there was this men's rights group that wanted to start up in U of T, and it was denied regardless of the fact that there was multiple women's rights groups at the same university. And the irony of it was that the majority of the members of that group were actually women. I think that yes, there's still hope. There's probably a way, but I don't know necessarily we might be going about it the right way. I don't think bringing shields and dowling rods and hitting each other at a university is actually achieving anything. It's fun to watch. But I feel that we need to start being more logical about our approach to this. And hopefully people like us will get more opportunities like this off of university campuses, and that there'll be a bigger thirst, a bigger hunger for people like us to speak.
There are a lot more people who feel the way you do than you realize. And a lot of people are scared, probably at your university, even say that like they feel the same way. If you have do you have little conservative clubs at your school?
Actually the president.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you, Mr. President. It's an honor.
It's really hard to recruit people because nobody wants to come out and say.
Again, I know I keep saying this, but try to start YouTube. Go on YouTube if you haven't already, or blogs and stuff like that.
Yeah, online communities are going to be your safe haven. It's going to be the place where you can mobilize more and get more people listening. Now, as a conservative, I think you're wrong. But
We should safely debate it.
But we should safely debate about it. Exactly. I don't think there's a conservative out there that's so dangerous that you can't at least listen to the words coming out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Hi, June and Greg. So polling, at least in the United States, Greg, shows that atheists and non-believers are one of the largest minorities, and yet we have very little representation in Congress. Bernie Sanders is that's about it. So how do you think we can try and dissuade a lot of the negative stereotypes and gain some representation? Thank you.
Well, actually, right now, it has been proven to be impossible to get elected in the United States if you haven't openly declared which church you have and you don't have an open public relationship with whatever your pastor or preacher is. Bernie Sanders, we can infer that he's an atheist, but we can't know for sure. I think that's always been one of the biggest fights of the atheist community is getting more public acceptance, especially in the political sphere. I think that atheism, even just without us even trying, is becoming more popular. It is a fairly fast-growing religious perspective, but I think that it won't be anytime soon that you're going to see an atheist get elected.
It will happen one day, though. I'm sure of it. One day.
So first off, absolutely love the suit. Second off, do you think that you can get stuck in a filter bubble filled with skeptics and people who are like-minded in that aspect as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. More lately, the skeptic community has been going after each other. Definitely, I'm one of the more popular heels for other skeptics to make videos about, and as much as that bothers me, it's a good thing. I can't deny that it's a good thing. But there's definitely an echo chamber even within our own sphere of the skeptic atheist community, and to be honest, we're probably not doing enough to make sure that that doesn't happen. I think though that, like I said, echo chambers are kind of they're kind of a result of natural human behavior. People like what they've found, and when they feel that they've taken the red pill and they have the right perspective on the universe, that they kind of just stick to that.
Especially if you felt alone for such a long time, and then you finally find a lot of people that think like you, it would be a little bit harder to go back into the atmosphere of all the disagreement, but it's worth it to try.
How many more we got there, Fritz?
The time is up, but for those that have already asked questions, please be polite and courteous to those that haven't, so that they can ask a question as well during the conference. Thank you.
Is it too late to get in line?
For this piece, it is. Thank you.
That's fine.
So we're gonna.
Yeah, so June and I are going to be hanging out in the convention hall. We've got a table wherever the tables are.
Oh yeah, we have like stickers and shirts. So if you want it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.